Cool. So sorry to everyone who missed the start because I missed the recording. Let me go back so you can have a look at the slide. Let's crack on. So the quote reads, "The Western genre is weird. I frankly struggle with whether it should be a genre at all, since the only thing that sets it apart consistently from other types of action, crime, and society stories is the peculiarity of its setting. Now, I would argue that the peculiarity of a Western setting is something that makes it such a distinct genre. So I would argue that this peculiarity in its setting is probably what makes Western such a distinct genre. I can easily tell if something is going to be a Western, whereas if it's something like a fantasy, a mystery, or a crime, it might take a few minutes, a few chapters to really reveal itself to me. So let's talk about the setting, considering it is one of the most important features of a Western movie or novel. So the time period would be the late 19th century to early 20th. So we're looking at not primitive technology at all, but just after the wake of the Industrial Revolution, before the First World War. So you have the expansion of mass-produced weaponry, and it's a very interesting period in history. It's generally set in the outbacks of America, surrounded by deserts and plains. It's a hot and harsh dust bowl with isolated towns starting the horizon. And I think this harshness is another factor that truly represents what a Western is about. It's about a harsh environment and the struggle for survival in it. And Western towns, most of the time you'll have a Western centering on a specific town or multiple towns. And they generally all fit into one sort of theme. They have specific buildings such as saloons, inns, mines, maybe a farm, and some graveyards, considering that death is all around them at all times. All the buildings are more or less made from rickety wood and rusty nails. It's really not a higher standard of living. Things look like they'll fall apart at any moment, and things do fall apart at any moment. Maybe there's a railway splitting the town into two opposing halves, with one side getting access to water and the other not, which sounds a bit like modern day Grahamstown. But let's move on. Please just unmute your mic and speak up if you have any questions at any point. So the characters. Westerns allow for some of my favorite character building. The characters can have some comic elements to them while still allowing for serious and intriguing backstories. And I'll delve more into this in our second half of the presentation. But what I mean by comic here is not particularly in the line of comedy or yeah, it's more quirks and interesting novelties that can make the characters really stand out rather than, just heaps of misfortune. So generally as well, unless one of them has suffered a misplacement, which might be an interesting plot point for a Western, the characters are quite rough and rugged. And after all, they've had to live in this environment where everyone and everything is trying to kill you. Take this roughness and apply it to their speech, their walk, their profession, and every part of their being, really. They have had to survive in this dust bowl, and it should show in the way that they're represented. So just some character ideas here. Maybe there's a ruthless gang member whose quick-firing Colt is an extension of himself. Maybe there's an old alcoholic coffin maker who has had to make them for too many of his friends. You really want to get into the nitty and gritty when you're designing Western characters, because I think that it's where the genre shines, and you can get so much done if you pay attention to the raw details. And then the weapons. You just cannot have a Western without the weapons. If you can, please, I would love to read it. I haven't come across one just yet. But no, Westerns do generally showcase the weapons of its time, and they have some very interesting weapons, some very interesting adaptations that came with the low standard of living. There's a lot of like homemade and DIY extensions to weapons and weapons themselves that are homemade. And this use of weaponry helps a lot of the Western's plot lines as they revolve around some tense action shots, Mexican standoffs, chase scenes on horses and saloon fights. And oftentimes these weapons are an extension of a character's personality. Do they have a single or double barrel revolver, confident that you'll be able to hit anything you're aiming at the first try? Or they're practical and like the reliability of having 6 rounds? Maybe they're sharpshooters and trust the ability to hit targets at long ranges. Or maybe they just disregard these weapons, these firearms altogether, and use knuckle dusters, knives, whips, lassos. The list really does go on. Or maybe they just have their own invention altogether. Maybe they've reinvented what a weapon means in that context. So I'm going to link you guys something in the chat that you might want to use later. It's a collection by the Royal Armories, and they have a bunch of weapons from that time. If you're ever looking to write a story on a Western and looking for guns that fit the period, that's a good resource for them. And speaking of writing for that period, let's move on to our first writing prompt of the day. So the sun glares down at you as you stand facing 3 mysterious figures at the end of the road. And now I'm going to do a little something a little different than the usual writing prompt. So I'm going to split people into 2 groups. One will have to have 4 because there is 7 of us. And what I'd like to do is have you each create 3 characters. So I'm going to just type this in the chat. 3 characters. So there'll be 6 total, 3 for each side. And you'll be creating, each team will be creating their own sort of gang of Western characters. So you'll have to come up with the characters, their designs, and the name of the gang. And then we'll expand upon this later. So just remember 3 characters, name of the gang. And yeah, please go all out. Make it as nitty and gritty as possible. And just really have fun experimenting. And also, here's another link you can use for creating names of Western, typical Western names. Cool, so I'm going to use breakout rooms. This is the first time I've used it properly, so I'm going to choose 2 breakout rooms. Cool, and then I'll join room number 2. Okay, so let's write until past, and then we'll convene again. Let's get started. Do you have any ideas?
Okay, I'm thinking of a character who lost his arm during mining. It was like an explosion.
Okay.
And yeah, and then he wasn't really able to mine anymore, so he turned to a life of crime, I guess.
Okay, that's cool. I like that.
You?
Maybe we can expand on that and have another character who lost his leg, lost his leg while mining, and they sort of have become inseparable ever since.
Yeah, that's good. I thought you were good.
I'm just writing this down.
Okay, I don't really have a name just yet. I'm gonna try and use the generator. Okay, generate.
So I have an idea, right? So this person used to be the town carpenter, right? And that town sort of became a ghost town, and he was forced to move out and kind of live life on the road, as it were. And then so now he's made this weapon of his that fires nails instead of bullets, because that was a resource that he had available.
I actually like that. It's like his profession, as you said, becomes an extension as well. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So is he going to be part of the gang as well?
Yeah. So those are the three, I think. And then we just need some names and a gang name.
Okay. So for first name, we've got Milburn.
Melbourne. Okay.
A second name, something cool. It's actually pretty hard to find.
And what are you thinking of, like a gang name?
Gang name. Let's see. I feel like it has to be something that that builds on the fact that they're all coming from really nice professions, and now because of circumstances they can. So some of them, he's not, the other one had a ghost town, and so he's on the road. What reference is that? Not drifters. That feels cliche.
But maybe something drifters, like something else and then drifters after that.
Yeah. So at least I have a start.
I like the name Aiston. I think that's a carpenter name.
Say again? Aiston.
Aiston Dawson.
Yeah, that one's cool actually.
Do you have an idea for the weapons as well?
The weapons. I'm looking at the weapon list over here. I don't know if this is actually in reference, to
I think Milburn should use the double barrel shotgun, which was a feature of the time, because he sort of, like his arm doesn't work, so you just kind of like sprays and prays.
Right. Yeah, that's actually good, because then you don't even need to worry about actually hitting anything.
Yeah.
The spread is really nice. Yeah, that would be cool.
Buster Kite, I like that name.
Buster Kite.
Yeah. Okay, so we just need a surname for Milburn.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep generating over here. That's what we get.
Maybe something like mine-esque, like copper, or like Milburn Copper, or Copperfield or something.
Yes, Copperfield's good. Cool. Milburn Copperfield. Yeah, it's actually a good reference.
Okay, now we just need a name.
Yeah.
Something drifters. I like it. I like the idea of drifters, honestly.
Those campy. Let's see. Mine. Just searching up things that show up in a mine. Something brothers.
Maybe we could do like the Copperfield drifters, and then Milburn is sort of like the lead.
Yeah, that could work.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, dude. I really couldn't think of it.
Yeah, I think we've got a good thing going here.
All right, so you wrote everything down.
Yeah. I wrote everything down.
Nice. I'm actually pretty excited to see what everyone knows.
Yeah. I have to done something. I see some people were like leaving and joining, so
yeah. So the carpenter dude uses a makeshift nail gun.
Yeah.
And then the one who lost his leg, what does he use?
Oh, that's a good idea. I don't actually know. I feel like he should use a rifle, because you can steady himself with the leg. There's no like human shaking there.
There's a certain character from, was it like in the 90s or something? I can't remember, but there's this character. She's this one lady, and she has a gun for a leg. I can't remember what her.
That's quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's one of those old films, it just focuses on action. But Planet Terror, there you go, Planet Terror.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that sounds quite cool. It's really. But I'm gonna close the rooms in like a minute.
Does he use a Sharps rifle or?
A Winchester.
Rifle. That's a classic. Yeah, definitely a classic.
Okay, hi everyone. I think this might be everyone. So yeah, would you like to share first, or would you like to share? Sorry, would you like us to share first, or would you like to share? And feel free to put it in the chat if you'd like. Okay, so I'll share what me and Martin came up with. Let me share my screen again. So yeah, so this is the idea that that me and Mark came up with. So we chose to name our gang the Copperfield Drifters, and it's headed by Milburn Copperfield, who lost his arm in a mining incident and had to turn to a life of crime in order to make an income. And he uses a double-barreled shotgun because he can't aim with his new arm, so he just sort of goes for the widest spread possible and hopes to hit something. And he's joined by Buster Kite, a character who lost his leg while mining, and him and Melbourne have become inseparable. And he uses a Winchester rifle because his prosthetic leg allows him to steady himself super easily. And finally, we have the wild card, Huston Dawson, who was once a town carpenter, but the town turned to a ghost town. So he created a nail gun from parts lying around and went and robbed and stole to make a living. So yeah, that's our little gang that that we've come up with. Did you guys manage to come up with something?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. We did not get around to a gang name.
Okay, that's totally fine.
And I think, well, we both came up with one character each, and then we came up with a third character, but we didn't really flesh him out.
That's
so
totally fine. Okay, hit me.
Okay, I'll say my character that I did write quite a bit on, and then maybe Tato can also talk about her character, and then we'll talk about the third one. Okay, so this is what I've got. Doreen Deadeye Amara was a wizened figure, but she still stood tall. Her knees clicked like revolvers when she bent. Oh, dang, I keep bending. Keep losing my... Her knees clicked like revolvers when she bent, and her thick gray hair was coarse as sand on her white, wide brim. Still from the back, her slender figure cut young and powerful. So much so, newcomers would mistake her as a youth until she turned around. A sun-beaten face, tan as hide, and crawling with lines, wrinkles, especially gathered around her left eye. Milky as the moon, scarless, a disease rather than a battle scar. But many legends were traded on how Deadeye had lost half her vision, yet remained the best shot in all the West.
I like that.
You want to?
I like that a lot.
Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, I'll expand more on it after Tato.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Oh my gosh, I actually didn't go into detail as much, but
no,
then
it's totally fine. We had like no detail,
cool.
So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so the name of my character, I named her Montana. She's in her 20s. She has red hair. She walks very, very slow, like sort of like to check out the room and stuff like that. Yeah, she always has a gun and she always has her hat on. And then with the second character, whereby we both did, the third character, whereby we both did it, and then like we decided to like merge everything at the end. So I said that the third character always has his hat on, like he'll never take it off. So I don't know if Nia wants to take it from there.
Yeah, we didn't actually get around to his name, but he's 12. He never speaks, and his weapons of choice are a slingshot and a shotgun. So we're kind of thinking like it's a bit of an unconventional gang. Like you have this old woman and this very young boy, and like this one young badass kind of conventional Western hero.
Yeah.
But they're all pretty scary together.
Yeah, no, they sound like quite a formidable opponent. I really like the small quirks that each of the characters have, like having only one eye but still being an excellent shot, and you know, someone who will just like never take their hat off. And it's things like those that let Westerns become so interesting. And just such a fun genre to write as well. It's definitely a very, very fun genre to write. So thank you guys so much for sharing. I really liked the characters that you came up with, and yeah, maybe one day their battle will be immortalized in fiction. Cool. Yeah, love Markin's point as well of having a mix of youth and a seasoned veteran. I think that's a very cool dynamic to have as well. Cool, thank you guys so much. Let us move on to a bit of a diversion. I just wanted to give you guys sort of an introduction to how to write a Western before I launched into the second part of this, tonight's session, which is Rango, a really weird Western. So Rango was released 10 years ago in 2011, and it is probably my favorite animated movie that I've ever watched. I know you have the likes of like the Toy Stories and all of that, but this is definitely one that has stuck with me quite closely. So I'm just gonna go into what Rango is as a movie and why I think it's such an incredible take on the Western genre and why I should analyze it here. So who am I? I could be anyone. It's a line that's repeated several times throughout Rango, and it's fitting considering that the heart of Rango is identity, a theme that's quite scarce in the Western genre. Traditionally, Westerns focus in on the themes of redemption, conflict, and especially conquest. The characters are self-assured heroes or anti-heroes. They know who they are and what they want. Traditionally, Westerns will feature great treks and journeys strewn out across beautiful yet dangerous outbacks. But Rango defies this notion of self-assured conquest. Instead, it's a reflective journey of a chameleon who can't blend in, and as a result, tries his best to stand out. This isn't a redemption story. Rango was no one, just an actor trying to find his role. So I'm going to show you two clips from the movie. Identity is first introduced very, very early on in the movie. Okay, now we're just going to move to an establishing shot in the movie that really shows off all the movie has to offer. Just pay attention again to the theme of identity, but also to the characters that are on display here, because there are some truly fascinating ones. Cool. Yeah, so I think it's quite a fascinating establishing scene. We get this idea of him trying to forge this identity for himself, and ultimately he doesn't. He ends up playing a character, just sort of figment of his imagination, of this super rough and tough and rugged gunslinger that he's entirely fabricated for himself. And we'll talk a bit more on that in a second, but I just also want to take a look at the characters in that scene, because I think the characters are incredibly well written and interesting Western characters. I don't think there are many Western movies that does a better job at creating such diverse and interesting characters. They have incredibly distinct features to them, while still embodying this rough and worn nature of a Western town. I mean, some of the characters even go so far as to being grotesque and crude. But I think this is a feature of the Western genre. And I think for Western genre to shine, it needs to have these elements to it. But uniqueness alone cannot make a character interesting. What makes these characters interesting is what I like to call their texture. So take a look at their asymmetric nature. They all are asymmetrical in some ways. Doc has only one ear. Dave has a broken horn. Turkey, most obviously, has an arrow through his right eye. Beans and Rango's eyes are mismatched. These imperfections and asymmetries are what truly sells a Western. It's this imperfection that really creates the genre and allows for interesting stories to be built on top of it. And we're not talking imperfections here, in the sense that, you know, they're slightly rough around the edges. Like, no, these guys are truly bottom of the barrel type of people. They're desperate. They're really willing to do anything to get what they need. In this case, in this movie, what they need is water. So they really are incredibly interesting characters. And if you ever get around to rewatching or watching it for the first time, just pay special attention to the characters and how well they're created. It's also a showcase of flexibility. So Rango by nature is a Western. It would be impossible to call it anything else. However, it's also so much more. The movie ties in a number of varying genres to create an interesting amalgamation of fantasy, action, surrealism, and romance, all while under the umbrella of a Western. And I think this is probably one of the biggest positives of genres that that do rely so heavily on a specific setting, is that it can be blended so well with genres that don't rely on such a setting. So think of genres that don't require the setting. Such genres include fantasy, romance, action, horror, mystery, historical fiction, and really the list goes on. If you have any more ideas of genres that can overlap into Western, please do put it below in the chat. And I think that's, yeah, it's just such an interesting feature of genres like Westerns, and they really can be adapted infinitely, which is just another proof that the genre's life is still very much there. Now I'll just show you one more clip from Rango. Exactly, as Mark can put it in the chat. A blend of horror, Western, and science fiction. I mean, even science fiction, as crazy as that sounds, can be blended into the Western genre. Let me just find the clip. 141. Cool, we'll go from here. Okay, so as we see at the end of the movie, he's found this identity. He's found an identity of a legend, of a hero, and he's done it not through wanting to become a hero, not wanting to become a legend, but instead by doing it out of selflessness, and going back when all the odds were stacked against him. And I think he's become the same character that he was in the beginning, the sheriff that looks out for the town, but now he embodies it rather than is just an actor in its place. So that's why I think that Rango is such an interesting movie. You know, so what? Why am I showing Rango to you? Is it just like an interesting look on the Western genre? And, you know, perhaps it is, and I'm going too far down a rabbit hole I invented. But I think it's more than just that. It's proof that these old and outdated genres still have some life left inside of them. Westerns and many other genres can be stripped of the old and often backward values that once sat at its core, and can be remade into something far more interesting and engaging, while still retaining what made them interesting in the first place. Yeah, so that's my motive on why genres such as Westerns are still important in the modern day era. Also, just a quick note before I move on to the prompt. Genres are born out of old, you know, American movies. It was around, they've been around for years and years and years. And as such, a lot of the old Westerns embody those backward and just outdated morals that were so unfortunately commonplace during that era. So I encourage you, if you ever find yourself faced with writing anything that has to do with the Western, is to try and find some diversity in your work, because there really wasn't a lot of it back then. It was all showcasing this, you know, macho, masculine American male saving the helpless princess, oftentimes disregarding the culture of the people who were there before. And yeah, I think it's time for that to change, especially in Westerns. So if you ever find yourself writing any form of fiction or nonfiction in genres such as these, I'd encourage you to do your best to try and include some interesting twists on those old morals. Cool, so now on to the prompts. So think back to the characters you created earlier. Now pick one, pick all three, or invent another one altogether and give them some texture. What is their arc in the Outback? How did they come to be who they are? What town are they originally from? Or have they stayed in only one their whole life? Do they have any friends? Anyone that supports them? Perhaps an animal that sticks by their side? Be as creative as you can. So yeah, I think maybe 10 minutes. I know it's not too long, but we'll be going slightly over time. So yeah, do you want to reconvene in 10 minutes and then we'll get to the sharing of the stories? Okay. Cool. Is anyone ready to share yet? Okay. I'll start things off. It's not a whole story. It's just sort of an idea for a character I had. It's not very fleshed out or detailed at all. But yeah, here we go. Aiston had it all. The only carpenter shop in a town of 200. Work was endless, and before he knew it, he was responsible for more than half the buildings in the town. He woke up each morning, stepped out of his beaten, creaking bed with his long, wiry fingers twitching in anticipation. It was hard work, but the money made it worth it. His eyes gleamed at the end of the day as he moved his earnings from a safe to a dugout in his yard. It was 6 feet deep, and coincidentally the same one his father had been buried in, and his father's father, and his father's father's father, and you get the point. Such riches were in vain, however, as a group of masked riders clad in black swept through the town, robbing everything that glittered and killing anything that moved. Aiston cared little for the townsfolk, but dearly for the gold in his garden. Hearing them approach his door, their boots dragging through the twisting sand, he grabbed everything he could, a bag of nails, some old machinery parts, and the clothes on his back. He fled to a mine a few miles south of the town and started work on what some would later call Death's clockwork scythe. He would be back. Yeah, that is that. Sure. Go ahead and post it. Would you like me to read it? Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Can you hear me? Sorry, it's not actually
Yeah.
letting me paste it for some reason.
Okay.
So let me just try and read it out. Okay. As a child, she lived on a farm, 3 brothers and 2 sisters, all working hard to keep the place afloat. Despite their efforts, it had dried up fast. The food, the livestock, the crops, the money, all drained away until they had packed up and left, the farm disappearing as a husk into the dust. Her father had never taught her how to shoot, so she taught herself. Late evening, when the boys weren't looking, she would steal their pellet guns and pistols and head out. Oh my gosh, sorry. And head out into the desert to practice. It was the one thing she found truly fun. As they've moved, oh, sorry. Could you stop the share screening thing? Because I keep getting like, I'm trying to read off my Word document and I keep getting like kicked out. I'm really sorry.
Sure. Let me stop. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry.
Not a problem.
Okay. As they moved about towns looking for jobs, her siblings began to settle down, meeting people they wanted to start their lives with. Picking up sweethearts and employment, Doreen found herself the only one still roadbound after her family had decided to stay in one place or another. With her parents gone, she moved still, looking for employment as a farmhand or ranger, but there was little work to be found for a woman in those areas in those times. Shooting was her only other real skill. She managed to land a job in the sheriff's office of a particularly rowdy town, and she helped keep the peace there for most of her life. When she was in her late 30s, a genetic disease slowly took her left eye, just as it had her mother years ago. Still, she remained one of the best shots in the area, adapting around her condition. She took over from the sheriff when he passed, but the town had fallen fast to ruin over the years, and the law had little hold there. She kept the beasts best she could in other ways, but was soon run out of town by the gangs that had taken over. Roadbound again for the first time in nearly 40 years at age 68, she found herself joining up with a ragtag gang of outsiders and had hopes of one day returning to her town to reclaim it. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I really like the fact that her whole character revolves around just constantly having to adapt and evolve. And I think it's really interesting that that she's an older person and that she survived such harsh environments. And I think that always makes for an excellent story to tell. And I think you've told it quite well. So thanks so much for sharing. I really, really enjoyed that. Cool. Is there anyone else who would like to share?
Can I try?
Please do. Please do.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it starts off by saying Montana, a girl in her 20s. Montana grew up with her father in a very small town called Jules. Her father taught her how to use a gun as well as how to fight. She was told to never show her emotions no matter what. She woke up one day on her 50th birthday, excited to celebrate it with her father. They would always bake her traditional red velvet cake because red was her favorite color, and her hair's red too. But on the morning of her 15th birthday, her normal traditional birthday did not happen. A note was left for her from her father. It was folded neatly on the kitchen counter, with the outside of the letter saying, "Dear Montana." Montana quickly opened the letter with so much curiosity. The letter wrote, "I have to leave. Use all that I've taught you to survive. Dad." This left Montana with more curiosity, confusion, and anger. Today, she's still haunted by her father's letter. However, her life has been made a bit better with her gang members that rule the town. She has this huge scar on her right cheek. No one really knows what happened, and she has never told anyone about it. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I really like the air of mystery that she has to it to outsiders, and I also like that she's dependent on a gang of people. So often westerns are this depiction of a solo rider who is the lone wolf, lives alone, dies alone. And it's refreshing to see someone who depends on others. So thank you so much for sharing. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right. Markin, if you'd like to share, please do. But if not, I'll end the session here. Sure. If you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. We are a bit over time, but I think it's fine if we squeeze one more story in. Regina St. Clair had originally been part of a convoy heading north. Her party was tasked with transporting critters both strange and brutish to their eager audience in the north. Regina was responsible for maintaining the health of the specimens and the occasional wounded compatriot. She had experience in the medical field that made her a treasured asset out there in the hostile desert, where disease and bullet wounds were far more frequent visitors than the heat that peeled their skin. If everything went according to plan, they would be drinking merrily, and life in the outback would just be another story they tell to their more sheltered northern counterparts. Little did they know that they weren't carrying them on the load. No, the exotic animals were harbingers of disease, and within little over a month, Regina's party was survived by her and her alone. Her medical expertise came in handy, but wasn't enough to save everyone. She found shelter in a nearby town and settled there. It wasn't long until she made a name for herself, Regina the Bone Mender. The miserable townsfolk adored her and came to her for every need. She trusted them, and they trusted her, but some optimistic fellows sought to take advantage of that. They'd come in under the pretense of wanting some chronic ailment alleviated by painkillers and the like. They were looking for a fix, and some were looking for trouble. But soon enough, she learned how to hold a gun, and she went from the bone mender to the corpse bringer. Ooh, love that ending. And yeah, I mean, what a character. Someone who can really do it all. And yeah, I love that she started out as a medic as well, but learned to also face the horrors that are out there. So yeah, I really like that. And the bone mender to the corpse bringer was was a stunning end. Cool. Thank you guys so much for joining the session. I know load shedding typically means that attendance is a bit low, but I really appreciate you guys all wanting to share and engage. And yeah, you guys really made the session quite something. And thank you so much. And I hope that you all want to explore genres such as Westerns a little bit more from now on. Cool. Enjoy the rest of your week and good luck for all the assignments. I know there's quite a lot coming up. So yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone. Bye.